And so now I'm going to find the right videos here to spotlight that will enable us to have a very important conversation about a very important issue in the Jewish community that unfortunately has not gotten the attention it historically deserves. I would love it if Dr. Keren McGinity were coming here to focus on the reason I met her many years ago, which is her innovative study of the interaction of gender and intermarriage experiences. She is currently a research associate at the Hadassah-Brandeis Institute at Brandeis University and an interfaith specialist at United Synagogue for Conservative Judaism, which in a job title shows how much things have progressed in the Jewish world regarding intermarriage, although if I can brag a little bit towards where we in Secular Humanistic Judaism have been for some time. And I wish Keren were here to speak about intermarriage and about how Ruth the Moabite joining the Jewish people is a great model for being open and welcoming. Unfortunately, but also importantly, Keren is here to speak about something else that she has also become a spokesperson for, and that is addressing and eliminating, or at least reducing, sexual harassment and gender discrimination within the Jewish community. In fact, the book of Ruth itself is also a book about problematic dynamics of sex and power. Boaz is a rich man with power over the widows who are gleaning from his fields, and someone who has a legal claim on Ruth because of the person she married who died, independent of whatever she feels. Ruth has to seduce Boaz very subtly. She sneaks into his bed at night to get him to extend her protection over her. The scene feels a bit like a 1940s movie where they look at each other meaningfully and the lights go down and then it's the next day and well, but they are not free to marry before another man who has a prior legal claim on her body and herself is negotiated with. Ruth and Naomi are navigating and negotiating dangerous and difficult waters for unattached and thus unprotected women. And that's just one story in the Hebrew Bible. There are plenty of others that we could point to as well. And so now it's time for me to stop speaking and to start listening. Keren has become a very courageous and active voice in the hashtag Gam Ani movement, a Jewish equivalent of Me Too, or a parallel perhaps, for the last few years. And so I'd like to turn the program over to her to share more about the important work that she's been doing in this area.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Chalom, for inviting me and for that very generous introduction. You know, I wish I were here to speak about scholarship as well. And I have before and I will again, but today you're right, we're focusing on hashtag Gam Ani, the Me Too movement, the Jewish Me Too movement. And specifically, I'd like to kind of draw a link, if I may, with my spiritual sibling who spoke earlier, Jared Jackson of Jews of All Hues, because I think he made a very important argument about meaningful anti-racism. And I'd like to suggest that while they are not the same, that there are certain parallels with anti-racism work and anti-sexism work. And the anti-sexism work to which I'm referring is specifically about living up to our values, which is part of the title that for this session, and thinking about Ruth and thinking about, you know, how challenging it may be to speak truth to power and to at the same time to propose an anti-sexism kind of agenda, if you will, that will eventually, I hope, in the not too distant future, empower more people of all genders to call out bad behavior. Because in reality, that is what living our values is about, treating everyone as the humans that we are. Whether it's in God's image or in human, image without the divine involved, to really get at the heart of this, we can tie that in with the meaningful diversity, equity, and inclusion work that is being worked on, rather than just sort of lumping it all together, to tease it apart and to think about, okay, well, how do we, as a Jewish community, and how do all of our organizations and institutions create environments where people feel comfortable calling out, whether it's a bad actor or not necessarily a bad actor, but bad behavior, whether it's sexual harassment, sexual assault, or any abuse of power. So to act, in ways, whether one could interpret what Ruth did as kind of a subversive sexual power situation, or the ways in which she spoke her loyalty, right, to her mother-in-law. And so I'm thinking about how do we act, enact, manifest, embody our loyalty to Jewish values and to treating everyone of all backgrounds, of all genders, of all races and ethnicities, and faiths, as we truly deserve to be treated, and at the same time recognizing that it's hard, and it was hard, very hard, initially for me to come forward. So I don't make light of it. I thought Me Too from the moment I first heard the word, saw it, read it over and over again, in the fall of 2017, of course, preceded by Tarana Burke more than a decade earlier. But I didn't say it and I didn't write it until the following June of 2018. Since then, I haven't stopped saying it. But I mean, I joke, it's not a joking matter, but I'd like to encourage people to start saying it more and doing it more, because it's only by working together that we can heal our community and become whole again. And I know that there's fear about making mistakes and about, perhaps getting being accused or caught or punished for something that was said or done many moons ago. And I think it's really important to both acknowledge the past and have a kind of reckoning, and at the same time to be compassionate with one another, and to understand that we'll make mistakes, and the important thing is that we'll learn from them, and we'll put one foot in front of the other until we create a Jewish community that truly is safe and respectful and equitable for all. Because that is being loyal, as Ruth was loyal to Naomi and to Judaism. And that is what I aspire to, and I would love for others to aspire to with me.
In that vein, we spoke earlier about the construction of this program, and we both felt that it was important that it be not just women talking about this issue. Ruth and Naomi have the power of sisterhood, and that does help them navigate very difficult waters. And as has often been the case, when you reported your experience, a lot of other women came forward. There had been, in some cases, a sort of subterranean network of people who said, watch out for this person. And this is not news to people who've been paying attention to this. The sad part is, as I said to you at the time, it's news often to men, because they are not targeted in the same way. They are not privy to the same conversation networks, because they don't need to be warned about their behavior, which isn't targeting them. And unfortunately, all too often, it makes them less likely to believe it, because they haven't experienced it. And if we've learned anything else from all of human history, it's that you don't have to experience it for it to have been real. That's what testimony is. That's what evidence is. That's what believing people is all about. So I really wanted to hear from you, because part of our goal in this process of our program today is not just learning, but learning with the goal of doing. What needs to be done in the Jewish community today when it comes to these issues of sexual harassment and gender equity, and most importantly, to believing women?
It's a great question. Thank you. I think, first of all, we need to normalize coming forward. We need to have that be what is expected of everyone, or what is the sort of the default is to come forward, to say something, to be an upstander, and to do something. So rather than the way it's been. And I think what unfortunately holds folks back is this cultural kind of baggage about lashon hara, or about idle gossip, that if one says something bad about someone else, that it reflects on the person saying it. I was raised by an amazing set of parents, but I do recall sort of this teaching about, if you throw mud, your hands are dirty. And when in reality, that's a perversion, that's a misinterpretation of Torah, and it's a misinterpretation of Jewish values. When in fact, what one should do, and what our teaching, what our texts say, what our values indicate, is that if you see something wrong, our responsibility is to call it out, is to do something about it. That is the right thing to do. But we haven't normalized that. We haven't normalized it. And to your point, Adam, about believing, absolutely believe. And people will say, oh, well, the pendulum has swung too far this way, and what about this woman? And that, it's like, well, okay, not only did women come out of the woodwork regarding that particular serial sexual predator, but since then, people of all genders have come forward about that particular person, but also about many others. So not everyone knows everyone's stories, and I'm not at liberty to share them, nor would I, because I'm a human vault. If someone shares a story with me, I will certainly help navigate their, if someone wants support on their Gamani journey to determining what goal they have, and hopefully to help them reach it. But at the same time, it's this idea that if someone hasn't experienced it personally, whether male or any other gender, that somehow it's harder to believe. And there are plenty of female identified people who don't believe, that somebody who acted a particular way to many, many people over decades is that bad because it didn't happen to them. And I mean, I don't know if that's cognitive dissonance. I'm not a psychologist, but it's like, we need to understand that just because we didn't have a particular experience, it doesn't mean that it's not true or needing of attention. And, we also, if I may just add on a piece, in addition to normalizing speaking truth and coming forward, we need to sort of turn down the volume on the cancel culture channel, because, it's not about academic freedom. It is not about intellectual freedom. It is about holding people accountable for their irresponsible, egregious, and totally inappropriate behavior. That's what it's about.
Right. We actually had a question from the participants that asked, what if someone were sexually harassed and reported it to people who sort of discounted it because, well, it wasn't rape, or it was just words but not action, the sort of nickel and diming undermining of people's experience and the importance of that experience, if it was A but not B. What's a strategy to address and respond to that?
Sure. Well, first of all, let me just say to whomever may be participating or listening, if you have experienced anything, whether verbal and or physical, I am sorry that you experienced that. It was wrong, and this comparison with rape, well, it wasn't that bad if it wasn't. We've got to throw that out the window. That's ridiculous. Okay, it was wrong. It was wrong. Yes, it's a spectrum, right? I'm not saying it's the same as. However, the trauma involved, is multi-layered. To circle back to also what my spiritual sibling said about the trauma of racism, the trauma of sexual harassment and assault doesn't necessarily know these gradations, okay? And it seeps into one's consciousness and affects one's personal life, one's career. So, we can acknowledge certainly the gradations, but I'd like to think of it as like the spectrum of Judaism, from the most secular to the most religiously traditional observant. There is this spectrum of verbal and physical misconduct, but that is what it is. It is misconduct.
And it requires acknowledgement. It requires atonement. It requires a lot of important steps that in many cases are not taken because people want the shortcut to continuing the way things were. So I guess I wanted to ask you, a number of our presentations today have tried to end on an upbeat note, even though we're dealing with a lot of problems and challenges. Have you seen any progress in the last few years? Are there things that give you hope that things are getting less bad or not getting worse, or perhaps even beginning to turn the corner?
Yes. However, there's still a vast amount of work to do. So I can certainly wrap up with a very positive little anecdote, which is that when I did come forward, the timing was fortuitous, in that the Me Too, the larger global Me Too movement was well underway. And while I was thinking I was potentially committing a kind of social professional suicide, I was very, very pleasantly surprised by the sheer volume of support that I received. Not only support, but gratitude, immense gratitude, which was a wonderful surprise. But so that was a good thing. And then also, so much has happened since then in terms of sanctions against bad actors, and organizations that are doing incredible work, and I won't name them because I'm afraid I'll leave one out, but they are there doing great work. And I'm happy to talk more about them with anyone who's interested, and to share resources. So the work is underway. And at the same time, there's so much more work to do to normalize coming forward and speaking out. And I think we do need a kind of Time's Up, like a legal fund of sorts. We need more resources for sure. And there also need to be more folks like me who are willing to stick our necks out for someone we don't know, who simply reaches out and shares their experience and is trying to figure out how to navigate a way forward. There are these organizations that are working with organizations, but we need more organizations like, again, I won't name them, but that are doing the work with individuals, because we need individuals in the Jewish community of all genders who have a Gamani story and journey need the support.
I will also say, just on behalf of the International Institute for Secular Humanistic Judaism, which I help to run, we're undergoing a process of self-evaluation based on the model materials from the Safety, Respect, Equity initiative that in many cases was initiated, or at least moved forward by the Gamani moment, to improve our internal systems, to create policies so that there are clear expectations. And it may not prevent every bad actor, because bad actors find a way to act. But if nothing else, it will deny them the sanction or the shelter of institutional procedures that all too often have kept things in the dark and enabled people to continue to do things that shouldn't be done. So I want to thank Keren for your work, and thank all the people, the brave men and women who have come forward to share their stories and to help move all of us forward. It's important for all of us, not just those affected by it, to treat this seriously and to prevent it from happening to others. Agreed.
Thank you, Adam. And it is definitely a movement, not a moment. And in order to keep it moving, and not just by virtue of having moving boxes behind me as my background, having just moved, but to keep adding fuel, because that is how we create positive systemic and structural change. And I'm in this for the long haul, and invite all of you to join me in this effort, because it is for the benefit of all sexes. It is not just a women's issue. It is an all gender issue.
Absolutely. Thank you again very much for coming and for participating in our Shavuot program. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Yours.